There is a way to die that does not appear on death certificates. A death that happens in small doses, so small that they go unnoticed. Like when a plant withers, there is no exact moment when it ceases to be alive, just a silent process of decay that no one can pinpoint with precision. At a cafe table, a woman checks her cell phone for the 30th time in an hour. Her fingers move automatically, sliding between apps she already checked 5 minutes ago. The coffee grows cold. The conversation with her friend fragments into mechanical responses. She doesn't even realize she's there, but she's also not really anywhere. A man arrives home after another exhausting day and throws himself on the couch. He turns on the television, picks up his cell phone, opens a beer. The sequence is always the same. Tomorrow will be the same. And the day after tomorrow too. He knows this, but something greater than his will pulls him into this routine. It is as if there is an invisible force driving his movements. There is something disturbing about the way we build lives that slowly drain us. It is as if we are protagonists of our own destruction, but unconscious spectators of the process. We sabotage relationships that could nourish us. We choose jobs that consume us. We create routines that numb us. And we do all this believing that we are in control. This is the quietest pain of modern existence. The vague feeling that something is deeply wrong, but without being able to name what it is. It's as if we are constantly living on the threshold between living and merely surviving, without ever being able to decide which side we are really on. Freud would call this something much more disturbing than simply a loss of self-discipline. For him, there is a force within each of us that works against our own life, not in a dramatic way, but through small daily choices that eat away at us from the inside. What if we discover that we are not as much in control of ourselves as we think we are? What if there is something operating behind the scenes of our consciousness, making decisions that appear to be ours, but serve a purpose we are completely unaware of? Imagine that every morning when you wake up, you make 1,000 decisions, whether to pick up your cell phone or not, what to wear, what to eat, what mood to be in. 1,000 small choices that, added together, make up who you are that day. Now imagine discovering that you didn't really make any of them. Freud revolutionized our understanding of ourselves with a brutal discovery. We are strangers to ourselves. What we call I, that inner voice that seems to be in charge, is just the tip of a gigantic iceberg. 90% of who we are operates in a region of the mind that we cannot directly access. It's like driving a car where you only see the steering wheel, but all the mechanics, the engine, brakes, electrical system, remain hidden. You feel like you're driving, but invisible forces determine much more than you realize about the direction you take. And these forces have their own memory, their own agenda, their own schedule. Think about the last time you promised yourself you would change something. Maybe it was to stop procrastinating, or to be more present in your relationships, or simply to go to bed earlier. You were sincere in that decision. There was a real, almost palpable determination. You could feel the energy of change coursing through your body. And here lies the first discomfort. It wasn't a lack of willpower. It wasn't because you are weak or undisciplined. It was because there is a part of you that has other plans. And that part is much more powerful than the conscious voice that tries to impose change through pure reason. Freud realized that there is a part of us that has its own plans. And those plans don't always coincide with what our consciousness wants. It's as if two people coexist within one. One who wants to grow, evolve, be healthy, and another who works systematically against those goals like a silent and efficient saboteur. This second person, whom Freud mapped as the unconscious, is not malevolent by nature. It operates according to its own logic, following patterns established long before we were able to rationalize them. When we were children and needed to emotionally survive situations we couldn't understand or control, a boy learns that seeking attention leads to conflict, so he develops a pattern of becoming invisible. Decades later, that same pattern sabotages his attempts to gain professional recognition. He doesn't understand why he always backs down at crucial moments. His conscious mind wants success, but his unconscious is still protecting that child who learned that being noticed was dangerous. A woman grows up in a family where love meant suffocation, so she develops a radar to detect and destroy intimacy before it becomes dangerous. She wants deep relationships, but something inside her always finds fault with her partners or creates conflict when closeness increases. Her conscious mind doesn't understand why she repeats this pattern with surgical precision. The most disturbing thing is that these mechanisms operate with sophisticated intelligence. They are not random mistakes or character flaws. They are adaptive systems that once made sense but continue to function even when the original context no longer exists, like a security system that remains active long after the danger has passed. It's as if we carry within us software programmed for an old operating system, trying to run in a completely different reality. The program continues to perform its functions with absolute dedication, but now they produce results that systematically harm us. But there is something even more disturbing. Freud discovered that this unconscious force not only sabotages our conscious plans, it is capable of creating elaborate rational justifications for its actions. You don't procrastinate because you're lazy. You procrastinate because it's not the right time, or because you need to think it through, or because other things are more urgent. Your conscious mind becomes an unwitting accomplice to self-destructive patterns, creating convincing narratives that mask what is really going on. It's as if the unconscious is a master manipulator, using our own rationality against us, turning our intelligence into its ally. Observe how this works in practice. With almost frightening accuracy, you decide that you are going to exercise regularly. On the first day, something unexpected comes up. On the second, you are too tired. On the third, it doesn't make sense to start in the middle of the week. Each excuse seems perfectly reasonable on its own, but the pattern reveals something much deeper operating behind the scenes of your life. The truth is, there's a part of you that doesn't want you to change. And that part is incredibly creative at keeping things exactly as they are. It knows your weaknesses better than you do, and it uses that knowledge with disturbing efficiency. Freud forced us to confront an uncomfortable truth. We don't have as much control over ourselves as we'd like to believe. Our most important decisions, who we date, what job we choose, how we react to stress, are influenced by forces that operate beyond our conscious awareness. That doesn't mean we're programmed robots with no possibility of change. But it does mean that real change doesn't happen solely through conscious willpower. It requires us to understand the hidden forces that govern us so precisely. And here we come to the most unsettling point. If we're not as in control as we think we are, who is really driving our lives? And what does this invisible force want from us that our consciousness refuses to see? Chapter 2. The Silent Killers. There is a war going on inside you. It is not an epic war with drums and battle cries. It is a silent war fought in the corridors of your psyche, where small daily betrayals undermine the territory of your very existence. The first soldier in this internal war is the relationship saboteur. He knows exactly where to press so that love turns into hurt. When someone gets too close, he whispers that this person is not trustworthy. When intimacy grows, he finds flaws where there was once charm. When vulnerability knocks on the door, he builds walls disguised as reason. A woman meets a man who makes her laugh like she hasn't laughed in years. On their first few dates, she floats. She feels alive, desired, interesting. But as the days go by, something inside her begins to catalog small annoying details. The way he chews, the way he talks about work, that joke he keeps repeating. In a few weeks, what was charming becomes annoying. She doesn't realize that she is executing a program she learned when love meant loss, when closeness resulted in abandonment, when trusting was too dangerous for a child who didn't yet know how to protect herself in other ways. The second killer is even more subtle: social suicide. It doesn't kill you all at once. It cuts the threads one by one until you find yourself on an island surrounded by water on all sides. It starts with physical isolation, canceling dates, avoiding phone calls, making excuses not to participate. Then it evolves into behaviors that make your presence uncomfortable for others. A man who has always been sociable begins to emit a strange energy in meetings. He makes snide comments. He disagrees with everything. He turns simple conversations into tense debates. It's not that he wants to be unpleasant. It's just that something inside him has decided that being alone is safer than risking rejection. And there are people watching this right now, recognizing these patterns in their own lives, feeling a chill of recognition running down their spine. Because we all carry at least one of these silent killers. The third soldier operates in the realm of beliefs. He plants poisonous seeds in the gardens of your self-esteem and waters them every day with carefully selected evidence. "You're not good enough," he whispers when you're about to apply for an opportunity. "You don't deserve that," he murmurs when something good appears on the horizon. These beliefs weren't born yesterday. They've been cultivated over years, fed by experiences you interpreted in a specific way when your mind was still learning to decipher the world. An absent father became, "I'm not important." A critical mother turned into, "I never do anything right." Bullying at school became, "I don't belong anywhere." The fourth killer is the laziest of them all: paralysis. It doesn't need to actively make you fail. It just needs to stop you from getting started. While you plan, research, and prepare for the perfect moment, life happens for other people. It convinces you that you need more time, more knowledge, more resources, more courage. A woman has dreamed of writing a book for 10 years. She has notebooks full of ideas, has read dozens of books on writing, attends workshops, follows authors on social media. But she has never written the first line of her own book. There is always something she needs to learn first. Some technique she has not yet mastered. Some more appropriate moment that has not yet arrived. The fifth soldier is the most obvious, but also the most disguised, addictions. Not just drugs or alcohol, but anything you use to avoid being present in your own life. Social media that consumes hours without you even noticing. TV shows you binge watch to avoid thinking. Purchases you make to fill voids that aren't material. Every addiction serves the same purpose: to take you out of the here and now, to remove you from the responsibility of feeling what you are feeling or doing what needs to be done. It is a consensual kidnapping of your own existence. But the sixth and final killer is the most lethal of all: the refusal to acknowledge that they exist. It is the killer that protects all the others, creating a bubble of denial where you can continue to believe that you are in control while your life falls apart in slow motion. It whispers, "Everyone does it. It's normal to feel this way. You're overreacting. Tomorrow will be different." And so day after day you postpone confronting these forces operating in the shadows of your consciousness. Freud knew that recognizing these patterns was only the first step in a much more complex journey. Because once you see the silent killers at work, an inevitable question arises. If they work against your happiness and well-being, why does your own mind keep them active? Chapter completed with 891 words. Chapter 3. Freud's Death Drive. There is something inside you that wants you to die. Not in a dramatic or sudden way, but through a slow erosion of everything that could make your life vibrant, meaningful, and fulfilling. Freud gave this force a name: Thanatos, the death drive. It is not a malevolent force in the traditional sense. It is almost like an impulse to return to the state before birth, where there was no pain, conflict, anxiety, or responsibility. A deep, primitive desire for dissolution, for non-being, for peace through absence. While Eros, the life drive, pushes us to create, connect, grow, build, Thanatos pulls us in the opposite direction, to simplify, reduce, uncomplicate through elimination. It is a force that seeks absolute stillness, the end of all stimulation, all tension, all the painful complexity of being alive. But here's the disturbing paradox. Thanatos rarely manifests itself as a conscious desire to die. Instead, it operates through behaviors that make life progressively smaller, more limited, less intense. It's as if you're trying to get closer to death without technically dying. Notice how this works in practice. When you choose mediocre safety over the risk that could lead to fulfillment, Thanatos is whispering. When you sabotage relationships that could transform you because transformation hurts, he is present. When you numb yourself with distractions so you don't feel the full breadth of your existence, he is conducting the orchestra. The death drive doesn't necessarily want you to stop breathing. It wants you to stop living intensely. It wants you to reduce your existence to a manageable, predictable, anesthetized version of yourself. A life that doesn't hurt because it doesn't mean anything profound. It's as if there is an emotional thermostat inside each person that every time life gets too hot, whether through love, creativity, passion, purpose, activates cooling mechanisms. Unnecessary conflicts, self-sabotage, decisions that diminish us. A woman finally finds a job that fulfills her deeply. For the first time in years, she wakes up eager to start the day. She feels useful, creative, alive. But as the weeks go by, something strange happens. She starts arriving late. She forgets important appointments. She creates friction with colleagues over irrelevant issues. Within a few months, she is back to her familiar mediocrity. It wasn't incompetence. It was Thanatos at work, reducing the intensity of her life back to levels her psyche considers safe. A man meets someone who awakens feelings in him that he didn't know he was capable of feeling anymore. The connection is deep, transformative, frighteningly real. But as the intimacy grows, he begins to find ways to create distance. He works harder. He travels constantly. He finds flaws where there was once perfection. He prefers familiar loneliness to the love that requires him to become a braver version of himself. Freud realized that this tension between Eros and Thanatos is not a flaw in the human psyche. It is its central feature. We are simultaneously beings who desire to live intensely and beings who fear that intensity. We want love, but love requires vulnerability. We want growth, but growth requires leaving behind familiar versions of ourselves. And Thanatos presents himself as the voice of reason in these situations. Be realistic, he whispers. Don't fool yourself. Protect yourself. Don't take so many risks. His suggestions always seem sensible, prudent, adult, but the result is always the same: a progressively smaller life. The death drive explains why intelligent people make choices that are consistently contrary to their own well-being, why we sabotage healthy relationships and cling to toxic ones, why we abandon dreams and settle for manageable nightmares, why we choose familiar suffering over the unknown possibility of joy. It's not conscious masochism, it's a primitive force that equates intensity with danger and seeks to protect us by constantly reducing the voltage of our existence. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Thanatos is its ability to disguise itself as self-preservation. When you avoid emotional risks, it whispers that you're being smart. When you shy away from opportunities for growth, it convinces you that you are being realistic. When you choose paralysis over action, it reassures you that you are being responsible. And so, slowly, your life becomes a progressively paler version of what it could be. Not through traumatic events or dramatic losses, but through 1,000 small choices that take you further away from the possibility of being fully alive. Freud's discovery forces us to face a disturbing question. If there is a force within us that works against our own vitality, how can we trust our own impulses? And if we recognize Thanatos at work, does that mean we can choose Eros? The most disturbing discovery is not that you have self-destructive forces operating within you. It is that these forces are you. They are not external invaders or mental viruses that have infected your psyche. They are legitimate parts of your psychological structure, created by your own life experience, fueled by your most primitive needs for survival. When you sabotage a relationship, it is not a demon doing it. It's a part of you that once learned that intimacy was dangerous. When you procrastinate on an important opportunity, it's not laziness. It's a part of you that has associated success with some kind of loss or unbearable responsibility. Freud taught us that the unconscious speaks through symptoms. Every self-destructive behavior is a coded message from a part of us that cannot express itself directly. Like a child who doesn't know how to ask for help and so breaks things to get attention. Your chronic anxiety may be saying, "Stop trying to control everything." Your procrastination may be screaming, "You're chasing dreams that aren't yours." Your difficulty maintaining relationships may be whispering, "You haven't learned to love yourself yet." But how do we decode these messages when they arrive in a language our conscious mind doesn't speak fluently? How do we talk to parts of ourselves that operate on logic our reason considers irrational? The first step is to stop fighting these patterns and start observing them with curiosity, not as flaws to be fixed, but as symptoms to be understood. Every relapse, every act of sabotage, every moment of paralysis carries valuable information about unmet needs, unhealed wounds, unprocessed fears. A woman who always chooses emotionally unavailable partners may discover that this protects her from having to reveal her own vulnerabilities. A man who sabotages every professional opportunity may realize that success in his unconscious mind is associated with betraying family values. But awareness alone does not heal unconscious patterns. You can understand perfectly why you do something self-destructive and continue doing it anyway. Because the unconscious does not respond to logical arguments. It responds to emotional experiences, to new ways of relating to yourself and the world. It's like trying to convince a frightened child using only words. The child needs to feel safe, not just understand that they are safe. They need to experience care, not just know that they are cared for. Freud discovered that real change happens when we manage to establish a different relationship with these dark parts of ourselves, not eliminating them. That's impossible, but integrating them in a more conscious and healthy way. The relationship saboteur can become a wise guardian who helps you identify truly toxic people. Paralysis can become a reflective pause that prevents you from making impulsive decisions. The death drive can become an ability to let go of what no longer serves you. But this integration requires something that our culture has a hard time tolerating: time, patience. The acceptance that profound change does not happen through conscious decisions, but through a slow and sometimes painful process of internal renegotiation. Every time you manage to pause before engaging in self-destructive behavior and ask yourself, what is this part of me trying to tell me? You create a gap between impulse and action. And in that gap, something new can emerge. It's not about having total control. It's about being more aware of the patterns that govern you and gradually having more choice about how to respond to them. It's about ceasing to be completely dominated by unconscious forces without believing in the illusion that you can completely dominate them. The journey of self-knowledge does not end with the final revelation where everything is resolved. It becomes a way of life, a constant attention to the subtle movements of the psyche, a permanent curiosity about one's own mysteries, an acceptance that you will always be in part a stranger to yourself. And perhaps that is the most liberating discovery of all. You don't have to understand yourself completely to live a more conscious life. You just have to accept that there is much more going on inside you than your consciousness can grasp. In the end, what Freud offered us was not the promise of a life without internal conflict, but the possibility of a more honest and compassionate relationship with those conflicts. The chance to stop hating yourself for your self-destructive patterns and start seeing them as clumsy but understandable attempts to care for wounds we don't yet know how to heal. Because perhaps true maturity isn't about gaining total control over yourself, but learning to dance with the parts of you that will always remain wild, unpredictable, deeply human. And in this delicate dance between light and shadow, between consciousness and mystery, we discover that being human is not a problem to be solved, but an experience to be lived, with all its disturbing beauty and unforgettable complexity. What dark part of yourself is trying to tell you something you don't want to hear yet? Write it in the comments. If you've made it this far, you've already taken a step beyond most people. You watch the videos. You reflect on each idea. Now the question is, how far do you want to go with this? If you want to take the next step and truly apply this knowledge to your life, the codes of the White Rabbit are ready for you. The link is in the pinned comment. Remember, success is a decision. The choice is yours. Count on me and follow the White Rabbit.